same as ever, Morgan Housel. We actually reviewed him sometime, I think last year in this book club, but we reviewed another book of his called Psychology of Money. Because, we reviewed Psychology of Money in December, one of the Decembers, we reviewed Psychology of Money. So the intention why we review book monies in December is so that you guys don't get carried away spending in December. So that's why we reviewed it by then. So I want to just do a quick summary, and then I'll open the floor to get your views, and off we go. So I just want to do this because I think this is better. Share screen. Okay. All right, guys. So I thought let me just do, because I think it helps me rather. So about Morgan Housel, he's just a guy who just is a columnist and a renowned author. He used to be a columnist for the Wall Street Journal. So he's a financial analyst. And I think the way I like him, or the reason why I like him to a large extent, is because he's able to break down complicated financial concepts into very simple, relatable, concepts. And I think he did that quite well with the Psychology of Money. So I was a bit reluctant to read his follow-up book, Same as Ever, because usually when you have an author write a blockbuster book, the follow-up book tends to be like not as, and I think maybe it's because I thought he has set the tone or the standard too high in the Psychology of Money. So I was a bit like, I'm not so sure if Same as Ever will match up to the Psychology of Money. So he's written 2 books, and all of them are bestseller books. Psychology of Money sold about 4 million copies, translated into about 50-something languages throughout the world. So it's quite an interesting book. I loved it. As a finance person, I found how he explained concepts very, very relatable. But I think also because he's a great storyteller, I think he's a great storyteller. He's got a way of putting stories together. And when I sort of bought Same as Ever, I was a bit skeptical. I didn't think Same as Ever will rise to the same standard. But what is the book about? Really, it's stories. And I think the thing with his books, and I think also the Psychology of Money, is you can read the chapters independent of each other. So you can skip around and move around. But I think the understanding is basically there's a whole lot of ideas or stories, concepts that he discusses in the book, quite a lot of them. But I think what he's trying to say is, and I think authors have a way of making us look at things differently. So we look at things one way, and a good author will come and say, maybe let's look at it this way. And I found what he does with Same as Ever is, because we are living in the 4th industrial revolution, technology, things are changing quite rapidly, and we preach the fact that you need to adapt or die, right? So the whole concept of adapt or die, because the environment is always changing, you also need to change with the environment, or else you'll be left behind. And I think what I like about Same as Ever is, and he uses this quote, Jeff Bezos, and I've read this quote so many times, but I think this quote sort of puts everything into perspective about the book. And in the beginning, he quotes Jeff Bezos saying, I very frequently get the question, what's going to change in the next 10 years? Which is a question that we always hear, what's coming, what's new, what's going to change? And he says, it's a very interesting question, a very common one. I almost never get the question, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? Right. And I submit to you that the second question, what's not going to change in the next 10 years, is actually the more important of the two, because you can build a business strategy about things that are stable in time. So in our retail business, which is Amazon, we know that customers want low prices. That's not going to change. I also know that that's going to be true for the next 10 years from now. They want fast delivery. That's not going to change. And they want diverse selection. That's also not going to change. And I think for me, then it sort of encapsulates what the book is about. Right. What are the things that are going to stay the same as ever? In the world of change, in the world of fourth industrial revolution, what are the things that we sure are not going to change? And if we know that these things are not going to change, then we are better able to plan around them, right? So, for instance, and I'm not going to go through the entire book, but for instance, the concept of greed, right? Greed was an issue in the BC during Jesus Christ's time. Greed was always there. Greed has always been there in the 60s. Greed was there during the financial crisis of 2008, 2009. Greed is even there today. And chances are in the next 10, 20, 40, 50 years, greed will remain the same as ever. The concept of risk has always been there. Risk is there even now. Risk will always be there, in the future. So knowing that people are greedy, right, you are able to plan around that. Knowing that the element of risk or surprise will always be there, you are able to plan around that. But I think I chose two things that stood out for me from the book. And I mean, there's so many, and I'm looking forward to hearing what your views are. But I think in one of the chapters, too much, too soon, too much, too soon, too fast, right? And he gives the story of this guy, Robert Wadlow, who grew up and one of the tallest guys in the world and ended up dying, right? But I think the story about Robert Wadlow the message that he's trying to push through this story is there are limits to growing, right? And I think it comes back to the whole question of when is enough enough, right? When are we ever going to get to a point where we say, I'm enough, I don't need more, right? Because what he's trying to say is, and I think it's also tied to greed. The more you want, the more, you want too much, too soon, too quick. It's actually very risky, right? And I love the example that he uses about Starbucks, that it had 425 stores in 1994, 625 in 1999. And by 2007, they were opening 2.5 stores per year, right? Per year, which means it's a new coffee shop every 4 hours. That's ridiculous, right? That's growing too much, too soon, too quick. And as a result, in 2008, during the financial crisis, they had to lay off about 12,000 employees. Share price fell by 73%, right? And what he's saying is growth is not a strategy, it's a tactic, right? Undisciplined growth, quick, I want it now, that lack of patience, right? That is what is going to make us lose the way. So I found that to be quite interesting. I mean, we know this thing, but I think I found it to be quite interesting that patience remains the same as ever. We are going to require to be patient when you build something. And that has always been the case in the past. It's the case now, and it will always be the case also in future. So too soon, too quick, too soon, too much, too quick, right? And then number two, I loved this. For me also, the best story wins, right? And I mean, I curate talks, I curate conferences, and people remember stories more than anything else. We remember stories of Jesus Christ, one of the powerful stories. We remember stories from when we were in primary school. We remember, we watch, we go to movies, we spend 2 hours, 3 hours in movies, series, binge watching series, TV, right? Because it's all the power of stories and storytelling. Again, stories remain powerful back then. Stories remain powerful right now, and stories in the future will remain powerful as well, which means if we know that stories are powerful in the past, currently, in the future, then it means that if you are to explain a concept, a difficult concept, a simple concept, right, you need to use stories because people remember stories than facts and figures. And he uses the Martin Luther King speech. I've known this, but I liked how he put it together. Because if you listen to Martin Luther King's speech, like if you listen to the audio, like, like those, if I don't know if you are able to get to listen to, even the guy, you are able to hear the guy who's speaking in the background. Because at the beginning, Martin Luther King is giving the talk, 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 talk. And then there's this guy in the background. And the guy in the background, is like, the dream, my brother, the dream, my brother. Tell them about the dream. And then Martin Luther King then switches to, I have a dream. Yeah, 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 the dream, right? And he goes on about the dream. I have a dream, I have a dream. And the guy is like, yeah, this is what I'm talking about. It's about the dream, the I have a dream speech has remained one of the most powerful talks, in the history, because it's a good story, because people love stories. Stories talk to emotions, right? They talk to emotions. Yes, you must make sense in the head, but you must also talk to the heart, the emotion, right? But also, I mean, he uses this example. I mean, I love Yuval Noah Harari. I've read both of his three books, Sapiens, Homo Deus, and Laws of the 21st Century. And Yuval is not an archaeologist. He's a historian. But what makes his books quite interesting is the stories in those books. He's able to decipher and make complicated archaeology and history something that is actually supposed to be boring, but he's got a way of making it sexy, interesting, making you laugh. For instance, he talks about in Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow. He says the Industrial Revolution created the working class. The fourth Industrial Revolution is going to create the lazy class. So in other words, machines will do everything, and as human beings will be lazy because we won't have stuff to do, which is quite interesting, or an interesting way of putting things, right? So he has taken things that are mundane, banal, things that are supposed to be obvious, and he has managed to repackage them in a storytelling format, and 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 people remember that. Best speakers, best preachers, best writers, authors, they do a very good job when they tell stories, not facts and figures. People don't remember facts and figures, but we remember an interesting story. So that's me in a nutshell, short and sweet. He's not saying anything. I don't think Morgan Housel is saying anything new. I don't think, oh yeah, there goes my laptop. Okay. So I don't think Morgan Housel is saying anything new, really. Uh, but I think what he's doing is he's finding a way of telling an interesting story, which is something that I think um, I I resonate with, which makes him one of my favorite authors. So that's short and straight. Let me open it up to the house at large. Who wants to go first? Welcome, Marcela. Is Mali here? I think I saw Mali somewhere here.
Evening,
Yes.
Doc. Yes, I am here. I'm just going on the way. I'm just on the way home.
Okay. Awesome.
Yes.
Who wants to go, guys? I don't want Mali to go. Glenn, I know you read the book. Okay. Glenn, and then Glenn.
Glenn is shy.
Oh, Ngosiam, Glenn. Oh, Lord.
Hey,
I don't
when it
know
comes to
Glenn.
pirates, he's not shy, but now, hey.
For the
No,
record,
Glenn,
I'm
go for it.
also very shy.
Prove him wrong, Glenn. Prove him wrong.
No, it's not about proving him wrong, especially after reading this book. I think it makes you get over some of the things, one of those things being that proving people wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think maybe I'll talk about 3 chapters that stood out for me. The first one would be, I think it's wild numbers.
Oh,
I
yes.
think that was, yeah, world numbers is quite interesting for me, just reading through the chapter. It's just amazing how when people ask questions around numbers, you know, there's the whole artificial intelligence going on. Business analysis has become such a huge industry, you know, business analysts left, right, and center. But this chapter breaks it down very nice, the psychology that's actually driving this. And it makes sense with this. Well, we live in a world that we can say it's ever changing. I know that contradicts the theme of the book, but what we're actually looking for throughout all of this is certainty. And you can sit with people and discuss the numbers. People actually zone out. You'll discuss the numbers, you'll discuss your graphs, you'll show them where the trend is going. But essentially, it boils down to, okay, how sure are we that we can follow a certain path? And at that point, it's as though people have forgotten what the story behind the numbers. So when I read this chapter, that it kind of settled that to say, actually what you looking for is just certainty, and it's quite tied up with risk as well. What's the chapter? There's a chapter that talks about risk as well, and an amazing chapter, because one of the statements that I picked up in that chapter is that risk is actually what you don't know. So we can, okay, okay. We can sit and predict what might happen and mitigate what we assume, well, not assume, what we call risk at that time, but that's based on knowledge. But if from that, I mean, you give it what, beyond 90% certainty, it'll give you the confidence that you've got everything sorted out. But actually, you might just, you know, things might take a quick turn based on something that you didn't know. So what I picked up just in that chapter is leave enough room for stuff that you don't know. You know, doesn't mean be ignorant and not research and so forth, you know, but it's just how, what a huge role risk can actually play. And then the third one, I think it was towards the end. Let me just quickly see the title of the chapter. Just give me a second.
I like what you said about the whole Seinfeld story, that you know, he left the system, canceled the whole thing while he was at the top, and went back to stand-up comedy, and because he wanted to leave while he's still high, he didn't want to experience the downside.
Yes, the low.
I found that quite interesting.
Yeah. Actually, I thought that was a good model to adopt.
yeah, leave while you are still hot. Like what? Yeah, you don't wait before it's cold. Yeah. It takes a brave person to do that, though. You know?
Yeah, because I mean, but it goes back to the chapter that I think you touched based on it, that talks about you know, how much is enough, you know, that talks a bit about greed, you know.
But
so
it's
I
enough,
think
enough.
yes. So I think the last one that I wanted to discuss was Now You Get It. So that's, I think, the fourth last chapter in the book. And that just explains, I mean, so many times we ask ourselves, you know, how is the second generation unable to absorb what the first generation did? You know, how is it possible that maybe the generation prior could do 1, 2, 3, and I live among these people, live with them every day, but am still not able to absorb the knowledge or the experience? And this explains it very well, to say, unless if it was, I think he makes a metaphor to say it was dished in a, I can't really remember what he used there as an example, to say stuff must be dished in, not really a spade, but something like that, something that's a bit rough. Say that's when you actually get to learn. That's when the head actually starts working, because now you see it firsthand to say, oh, actually, this can happen if 1, 2, 3 doesn't go right. And it makes whatever prior knowledge or experience, it validates it. And actually, that's the only, well, not the only, but one of the points where you can actually say, okay, now that I've experienced it, I understand what this is about.
And yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting. I mean, he also makes, I think in that chapter, because I highlighted here, he talks about how Trevor Noah once discussed apartheid in his native South Africa, noting if you find the right balance between desperation and fear, you can make people, do anything. Yeah, I found that to be, because you need to have experienced it to understand it, to get it. Actually. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Awesome. Is that it on your side?
For now.
Okay. Cool. Thanks a lot, Glenn. That was literally quite insightful. Chairperson Vena.
Thank you,
then
leadership.
Tumelo after. Yes.
Just a quick one from me as my opening remarks.
Yes.
There's a line where he says, processes still endure. Life is the same as it ever was. And throughout the book, I was just fascinated by the correlation with religion, or with the times that we find ourselves in. I mean, he talks about voting according to tribal lines or tribal identities.
Okay. You had to go there. Okay, let's go there.
I couldn't help it. I guess we were all bombarded by the news. But it's like, well,
yes,
if it
I
was
remember
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, if it was like that before, then what are we fighting? What's the fuss about? I think this will become a book that is now underrated, but it's a quotable book, like your outliers.
Yes.
It has some beautiful nuggets. But throughout the book, and I guess it's my lens, it's my perspective of religion, you pick up where he talks about, is it fluke? Is it a fluke hanging by the thread? Is it random? Is it fluke? And I say it's mercy, it's grace, it's us being blessed, and that thread just keeps on going. In Wild Minds, he talks about taking risks. You can't take no for an answer. But I then say, is that not faith? Is that not that undoubtable faith that we should have in things that we believe in? And he goes on about Elon Musk and what he plans to achieve when he was 32. I think I'll stop there for now. Curious to hear what
it's quite interesting when you say that, because I think yesterday or the day before, no, in fact today's Thursday, the board of Tesla is voting on approving or not approving Elon Musk's 56 billion salary. Right? Today, I think it's today. Yes, it's today. They are going to vote as the board or shareholders. I can't remember. I think it's the board. Yes, it's the board. They're going to vote on yes or no. Elon Musk must get $56 billion dollars as a salary. And that is going to make him the highest paid CEO in the world. Now, the question that comes is the same as ever before, that you'll always have the CEOs raking it in, and the lowest level paid employee still struggling. So it looks like the book should have actually been history repeats itself, because clearly
I think
we have
so.
seen the script before, right? But it's quite interesting how he's able to skid in the middle. But I think the tribalism thing took me by surprise. I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that. But thanks. Quite interesting. Thank you so much, Chairperson.
Thank you.
Anyway, Tumelo. Yes, Tumelo.
Oh, hello everyone. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for welcoming me. Yeah,
Awesome.
so for me, Doc, I'm just going to first start by mirroring to mirror what you have mentioned about the skepticisms that you had approaching the book. You know, because it's always like that with me. It doesn't matter like if it's an artist and he has a very good debut album.
Yes.
And the second one, there's a high chance that it's either that book won't be good, that album won't be good, sorry, or we might find it it's good, but we are comparing it to the previous album, which then equally puts it at like a bad perspective. So
yes.
You know, that's the perspective that I had when I approached this book, because I've read I think probably 2 months back, The Psychology of Money, which I would say it's a very nice book because it tackles the aspect of money that we hardly consider, you know. Sometimes we like to think it's better to think in numbers, but we forget the emotional part that is also involved, and which the author touches on also in this book, that I liked as well. So because of that, when I read the book, I felt like, okay, no, it's an okay book. Then I fell into the trap of saying, no, man, this book is actually not that good. You know, that was my first thinking about it, you know. But then I realized as I read, there's a chapter that I read where it talks about expectations and reality. I was like, hey, why does it look like now I'm falling into the same trap that is is actually explaining here? Because now there's a part where it says that actual circumstances don't make such a difference in all cases. What generates the emotion is the gap between reality and expectation. So I was like, you know what? Let me put away my expectations of the book. Let me read it for what it is. Let me forget that it was written by the author who wrote such a great first book, you know. And once I started doing that's when I realized that, no, actually, this is a very great book, you know. Because one of the first things that I do for myself when I want to read a book is I want the author to convince me why I must read the book. So, and you find that in the introduction. You know, the introduction is where the author actually has to sell their story, because like how some people pick books from a bookstore. They'll say, okay, interesting title, let me check the introduction. What's the author? What is it that the author wants to talk about? But then when you mention that, you know what, we as humans, we are not good predictors of the future based on the past. And then he also gives you examples as well. And you also start to think about examples that have happened in your life where like, no, historically things have been going like this, and then all of a sudden they change. And they're like, okay, this looks like now we are not good predictors of the future based on the history. But then the things that have been happening 1,000 years ago are still happening till today. We are still human beings who are driven by emotions when we take decisions, be it on money, be it on anything. So I was like, you know what, this is a book that let me give it a chance, you know. So I'm just going to highlight the few of the things that I liked about it. Although I have to mention also that, you know, this book, it didn't give me a lot of solutions, but it gave me a lot of questions and things to think about. I'll mention one where in the chapter talking about trying too hard. You know, it's true that us as human beings, we think complex things mean they are more true than simple, that idea that I explained like in a very simple manner. You know, I like that chapter a lot. Because, you know, like I don't blame us for thinking like that. You know, when you're bombarded with a lot of things, you feel like these are the things that are very measurable, you know. But then now the idea of things being simple, that's how, like, it's the best way to represent everything, you know. But we don't like that, because he mentions the story of cancer, where, you know, he says like there's a stagnation in the research of cancer now, because we are more focused on when the disease is there. Now let's research on how to stop it when it's already there, and we don't focus on the prevention side of it. You know, it got me thinking, because imagine now if I come to you and I say, start eating veggies, they're gonna help you. You're gonna have a long life. You're gonna live up to there's a high chance you're gonna live up to 80 years when you eat veggies. You're like, like, it doesn't move you, because you don't see the immediate results of it. It's like it's boring. Prevention is boring. It's boring, as the author has mentioned. So now the question becomes, and this is the question that I still have. I didn't find it in the book. That how do we now make people love or fall in love with prevention? I felt like he just brought that thing that, prevention is boring, but there's no solution on how now do we make people love it, because it's clear like prevention is the better way. It's better than cure. So, but then how now do we make people to love it? And I still haven't found the answer to it. Hopefully, we'll be able to discuss it and to see how such things we can go about, And also, one other thing that I want to touch about also is on the part of the best story wins.
Yes.
As I was reading the book also, remember I told you that, I eventually changed my view on the book.
Yes.
And part of me doing that was because of how the author was telling the stories.
Yes.
It's one of those, don't overcomplicate the stories, put them as they are, as simple as possible, because that's what we love as human beings. Yes, numbers are nice to have, but give me a story. That's where I get to resonate with something. The part where he says that, great ideas that are explained poorly go nowhere, while wrong ideas that are told compellingly can actually ignite a revolution.
Yes.
I was like, you know what, this is nice. This is a lesson to everyone that, you have an idea, but an idea might not be enough. How do you package it? How do you sell it? I feel like that's the sweet spot that the author is teaching us about now, to say, let's find that sweet spot between telling a story and actually pushing our great ideas through the story. So I really liked that part as well of the book. But overall, if I were to rate the book, I'll probably give it a 7 out of 10.
We'll get there.
Okay, sorry, I'm jumping the gun, yeah. Yeah, it's a very nice book.
Yeah, on expectations and reality, and this is a difficult one. Like, it's a difficult one. When I read it the first, I've read it before. I've seen it somewhere before, but when I read it again, I'm like, where he talks about, he says, investor Charlie Munger once noted that the world isn't driven by greed, but it's driven by envy, right? But he says, and I've heard this before, he says the key to happiness is low expectations. Oh my word. Like, okay, the key to happiness is you must not have high expectations. Because once you have high expectations, there's always a chance you'll be disappointed. So you want to manage, you want to be happy, have low expectations, let people pleasantly surprise you. I battled with that. Like, how can you not have high expectations in life? Like, for yourself, for people around you, like, And then when he mentioned that Charlie Munger once noted that the world isn't driven by greed, but it's driven by envy. And he says that in that chapter, he says something along the lines that if we are all earning the same amount, staying in the same neighborhood, driving to one car, a family of 4, blah, 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 we are all okay, right? There's no one who's envying another one. But once there are others who then climb the ladder and they now have 5 cars, double-story houses, and then that's when greed comes in. Sorry, not greed, envy. Envy comes in, because now we envy the next person and then we want to be like the next person, right? And I found that to be, Charlie Munger, I think, is one of the most underrated investors. Yeah. We always talk about Warren Buffett, but I think
the most underrated.
Right? It's the most underrated. And I think he's got this. Charlie Munger has got this personality of a mango. Like, he will say all these bombs of nuggets, and with a straight face. Like, at least Warren laughs. Warren laughs at his own jokes. He laughs at his own stories. Charlie Munger doesn't laugh, right? And so it's so easy to miss his wisdom. But when you read this, I'm like, whoa, okay, that's quite interesting. I'm still battling with this whole key to happiness is having low expectations. I don't know
but
about that.
in a simple example, let's say, Doc, now I'm about to have a meeting with you, a physical meeting, and when we're saying, no, let's meet at 7 p.m.
Yes. Yeah.
If in your mind you are saying, nah, I'm expecting Tumelo to be 10 minutes late. You see, it's more like lowering your expectation of me making it in time. If I arrive at 7 minutes past, you probably won't be that angry compared to if you had high expectations that I'm going to make it on the dot.
But I don't know if I want to live life like that. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, I want to believe I'm very optimistic, right? About the future, about things will work out. And then it feels like I have to be cynical a bit. I don't expect much from the government. Let them pleasantly surprise me. And I'm sure you'll be happy. I'm sure you'll be happy. But I don't know. I don't know. But I hear what you're saying. That's
Can I put a comment on the Doc?
Yes.
On that.
Yes.
But for me, he hit the nail on the head there. Because it's not necessarily about being. I think there's more to this than that statement alone. What I mean by that is it's not necessarily to say that we are cynical around someone being late and you are fine with it. It's about there's more to it in a sense that you don't have to be like that. Like you keep your standards up, but understand that the world is the world. And the world will always be the world. And if you come across as no, but I expect you to do this, you will always be disappointed.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. Got it. Okay.
And also briefly he mentioned also when I think somewhere I forgot the chapter, but he was talking about rational optimism. That you are driven by hope that things will go well, but there's that little piece of doubt that it will actually happen.
Yeah. It's and I think to Vena's point, it's got this. It messes up with your mind a bit. Like it sort of rearranges your brain a bit. It keeps you thinking. Because in that chapter, Expectations and Reality, he says money buys happiness in the same way drugs bring pleasure. Incredible if done right, dangerous if used to mask a weakness, and disastrous when no amount is enough. Right? Like, this is like a piece of writing. You sit there, I mean, it's like 3 sentences, right? And you see then like money buys happiness, like drugs brings pleasure. Incredible when it's done right. Dangerous if you have a weakness, because if you have a weakness and you have money, it's dangerous. And it's also disastrous when no amount is enough. But okay. Yeah, I read this book twice, by the way. I read this thing, and then I read the audio. I listened to the audio twice. I listened to the audio twice. And every time I listen to it, it still messes up with my mind. But anyway, thanks to Melo. Who wants to go next? Mali? Let's hear you, my brother.
Yes, Doc. Let me do this. I know I'm going to show myself from in the car, but I'm safe.
No, that's fine.
I'm not driving anymore. So it is a brilliant. I think I told you and Len as well that at church.
But you were
it is really good
at the beginning, right?
You know what it is, Doc? You know when you're just like, ish, okay, let's just see what this guy is saying, right? There's nothing, the same as ever. And then I started reading, I think from get-go, when I started, in fact, I listened to it and I was just like, I'm going to buy the book as well. It's so thought-provoking around what he says. Now, I'm going to say something, I'm going to criticize you a bit, Doc.
Yes, go for it. Go for it.
It's what he say. I mean, a lot of what he says is nothing new, as you always say, right? We've heard it here and there.
Yes.
But and it's I go back to the Diary of a CEO and how and how you criticize the poor man.
I knew the conversation's gonna go there. I knew. Okay.
And you criticize the poor man for aligning with us millennials. And bring perspective to us millennials around subjects that he was discussing. But in any case, let's move on. So what I really like about this book, there's this I've always been fascinated around there's nothing new under the sun, the scripture as in the Bible, and how there's a few books I've read recently as well that talk about that whole there's nothing new under the sun. One of the books I read is called Poor Charlie's Almanac. It's Charlie Munger's book. And in there he talks about the theory of the theory of misjudgment. And in the theory of misjudgment, he talks about how the biases of people are always going to lead them to do the same thing the whole time, and there will always be misjudgment because of the way people react. People are the same. There's really nothing new. And he covers a lot of that, obviously. In fact, this whole book is basically about that. There's another book I read recently around, it's called The Man Who Solved the Market. And it's about this one of the best hedge fund managers of all time called Jim Simons, and how he used historical data to basically map quantitative analytics, and how he's used what has always been there to prove that he can make even more money than anyone in the world with trading. And he used exactly that. And this book is basically hitting the nail on the head with that. One of the things that I really like, there's a chapter, I'll tell you now which one it was. And he talks about, I think Glenn also mentioned it now. It was where he says in wild numbers, where despite the difficulties in understanding the math behind risk and uncertainty, many people still seek certainty in their lives. And he then talks about the book, the movie Zero Dark 30. Now that's probably one of my favorite movies, where the one about how they caught Osama bin Laden. And he talks about how the president came in there and said, okay, I hear all the numbers, there's a probability of that. And a lot of people always want to get to, where we use probability in everything. It's probably going to be this or whatever. But a lot of people, as Glenn mentioned there, people just want the fact that, yes, I mean, you can go all the way to an extent where you can convince someone that I know what I'm saying, right? And if you sound certain, and it also touches, I guess, into that the best story wins. If you sell something so much so that people actually think you're certain about what you're saying, people will always go for it. Right. And it actually reminds me of that the story of WeWork, and how that man
Adam Newman.
actually Adam Newman took literally billions of dollars from the one fund on to a company that actually didn't, it was run so poorly. But it's the story that he told. That man was such a good salesman. He was such a clever way of doing. In fact, many of these failed startups, now that I think of it, always had the great story in that. The certainty. Very great. I mean, now I'm obviously touching into that storytelling as well, and how the stories that these people said convinced you so much so that, yes, man, I mean, this is exactly what's going to happen. You're going to draw blood, true blood, for instance, that we read. You're going to take blood from a little syringe, small blood, and it will be able to tell you your sicknesses, diagnosis, and all of these things. And people were like, yes, it's going to happen. And she went to jail. So it's so brilliant how he talks about, again, there's nothing new under the sun. And it's so true. There really isn't. There's never been, and there will never be. And I think reality is, I always say to myself, right, around the time tells its own story, because time is basically just telling history over and over and over again. And we live in that time to actually see if what's going to happen now has happened before. I think I've actually asked you, Doc, once upon a time around what country, for instance, what country has gone through what South Africa is going through? And you mentioned Singapore. Right? To say the reason for that is, if Singapore can go through it and can come out of it the way it does, what South Africa can as well. We just need the right people to do it. And that's the whole thing, is that I think this book is very encouraging in that it gives you perspective more than anything to say, don't worry, get back up and do what you need to do, because there's always a way to change that situation if you know what that way is. The last one I want to talk about is I think it was wild numbers? Don't compute. No, don't compute.
Oh, yes.
So yes, don't compute was also a good one for me on how this one for me was probably one of the most interesting ones on how you can calculate everything and anything that you want to calculate in life, right? But you'll never get it to 100%. And they talk about in World War II of how the people the Germans could actually the Germans had the best engineers, the best everything, and yet they still couldn't calculate the insanity that was in Hitler. Where this man would go would lose, like he doesn't care. He had nothing. He had this mentality of, I have nothing to lose. It doesn't matter. I mean, obviously he ends up killing himself just to show that you couldn't calculate that. You can't put that in a mathematical model and say, oh, the way this guy's actually going, he's actually gonna throw the war because he doesn't listen to us, right? And that's the one thing I really enjoyed about this, is that it really is true. You can do whatever you want to do in life, and yet it actually connects to the first chapter with risk in that sense. But you don't know what you don't know. And because you don't know what you don't know, there's always a certain type of, or there's always room to get disappointed and for something to not work out as you would want it to work out. So it's like, there's a lot to this book. I'm actually, like I said, I'm buying the book. I'm going to underline like no one's business. And it's one of those that I'll read. It's like, funny enough, Doc, I actually told you I want to eventually one day do a TED Talk, and this is probably one of the things that drives one of the topics that I'd want to talk about around the TED Talk. Just the fact that really there's really nothing new under the sun, and just people need to think different. And in thinking different, you can use it to your advantage, that there's nothing new under the sun.
No, thanks. But I mean, there's quite a lot to take out of what you just said. I mean, one of them, I agree with you. It's not that I was saying there's nothing new in a way that I was expecting some innovation or groundbreaking stuff. I mean, it's the same thing. Venham mentioned outliers, I think, in her assessment. And I think it's in Outliers or is it Outliers or the other one, where there's a 10,000 hour rule, right?
Yes.
Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hour rule. And people say, no, but that's not Malcolm Gladwell's theory. You know, there are psychologists who did this and they came up with the number and they wrote about it, right? I guess what I'm getting to appreciate more and more is who is able to tell it best, right? I'm getting to appreciate who's able to tell it best.
Yes,
and
the best story.
You're right. Yeah, you're right. In fact, the guys who get to, and I think it comes back to the same thing, the best story wins, right? I mean, the story of Jesus Christ, I'm sure there were other stories, but the story of Jesus Christ, somehow it was told, and it won, right? Well, some people can argue. But if you look at, and I like what you're saying about the entrepreneurs, there's a book, Snakes in Suits. I'm sure we'll read it at some point. Snakes in Suits. And it talks about how this guy is in silky suits and ties. They have a very, very smooth tongue. Very, very good storytellers. Amazing good storytellers. Let me give you an example, guys, and maybe you guys, I mean, there was this whole thing recently about Thabo Bester, arguing in court, with not arguing, but putting up his story that he wants to wear his Gucci clothes and what when it comes to Jane. So he's got the accent, right? He's got the accent, he's got the confidence, he's there. And it's quite interesting how people, or South Africans, were like, wow, actually, he's got a point. Wow. he's actually smart. And I'm like, this is why South Africa is such a gullible nation, because we buy into stories that are sometimes not even, we shouldn't be buying into. So you're right. I like the fact that you're saying that. Actually, when I think about it now, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, great storytellers, great storytellers. They're able to spin a story and we buy into them. They're able to talk to the psychology. So to answer Tumelo's question about how do we get people to eat veggies so that they don't get cancer, it's because scientists have not done a very good job of telling that story of us eating veggies. They've always been focusing on the science, the facts, the figures, and the science. People don't make decisions based on the science. They make decisions based on the story. And scientists are terrible at storytelling, right? They need some very good PR. Somebody's going to come and tell a story, like the story of the Titanic, for instance, or Games of Thrones, for instance, right? That people will get hooked into it. And I'm definitely sure we'll solve the issue of it's okay to eat veggies and be happy. At the moment, you're not convinced.
I like that.
Yeah.
Can I just say on that, right? It's actually very interesting you say that, because a lot of the time, like you're saying now, I think the world is very isolated in its way. And maybe it talks to what you were talking about, what Dumala was talking about as well, or is it you? But around what was I gonna say now? Sorry. But in any case, so the whole thing of when I say it's disjointed, we almost have our people, our own people, and we trust our own people. A scientist will always look down on someone that is not a scientist. A developer will always look down on someone that's not a developer, because they think that their career is most important. And a lot of the time, people don't understand that nothing is built in isolation. Now, if scientists were the good scientists that they think they are, they could have easily said, I do not know how to tell the story. And therefore, I need someone that can who's actually, he mentions it in the book, the great storyteller that took maths. He talks about the two guys. The one was, what's his name? The guy that was in a wheelchair.
Not Mark Twain.
The astrophysicist.
Yes. The one who's in Big Bang Theory. How can I forget that guy? Oh, my word. Yeah.
Stephen Hawking.
Stephen Hawking, yes.
Yes. So he talks about how Stephen Hawking brought a theory to life for people, the general me and you. And that's how Stephen Hawking became who Stephen Hawking is that they take complex identities, theories, and not dumb it down even. Just explain it in a different perspective for people to actually grasp what others are trying to say. And I think there isn't enough of those, obviously, guys that are geniuses, that are able to come down to our level, that are not geniuses enough for them to explain what they're actually trying to do for us to win us over. I mean, Elon Musk, you're saying Elon Musk now, he does it perfectly. This man is saying, listen, we're going to Mars, right? He's just taking something that people have always played. There's people at what's that place? NASA that have probably sent robobots and whatever to thing. But he's just bringing it down to layman's term for all of us to say, no, it's possible. This is exactly how it's going to happen. We read the Elon Musk book, and the idiot, what do you call it? The idiot, I forgot what it is, where he says, no, but this thing costs this much to make, for instance. But you're selling it for...
The law of first principles.
Yeah, the law of first principle, but you taking you're selling something for $100,000 that actually costs you $10 to make, let's say, for argument's sake. And he's saying, but that's stupid. You actually, and you are actually not making sense to all of us for us to actually come. We'll make it ourselves, because what makes sense. So he brings everything to first principles as well, right? And that's how Elon Musk thinks. He's able to join different things. Now, coming back to what I was saying now around being able to know that I cannot work in isolation enough to bring people in and work with you that can do something better than you is the only way people are going to convince others to eat veggies instead of eating the fatty things before. Is that you know what you can do, and the things that you can't do, outsource it to someone that can. Let's collaborate so that we can bring something better to the table.
Awesome. Perfect. Thank you so much, Mali. You and I can talk the whole night on this. Mr. Kunene and Sharma. Let's bring Sharma into the equation, and then we'll come with the wise man after. Sharma?
Can I read the book now? No,
not yet. I have a feeling you're going to give it a high rating, but I want you to tell me what it is.
So for the first time, I decided that I'm gonna go with the Audible version instead of buying the actual book. It does not work for me because reading is such an escape. So I'm the type that like Miley's gonna do next. I read, I write, I make notes on the side. So I listen to it and I feel like even my thoughts are all over the place because I didn't get to structure them as I would when I'm reading the book. However, I love a feel-good book. I always say this. I love a book that feels like validation. So for me, I love when Miley says there's nothing new under the sun. I'm like, yes. So I love reading things that I have already thought about or I've already heard of before because I just generally struggle with change and new things. So if a book speaks to something that I've already heard, I'm like, yes, let's keep reading. If it's new concepts, I probably won't even finish it. So I was listening in transit. So I didn't feel like I got the meat of like if I had been sitting down and reading it. But I absolutely loved it. And the thing that stood for me in no particular order, I think it was Ms. Vina when she spoke to how some parts of it felt like if you're like me and you're a Christian, things that feel like faith would really stand out. So when he speaks to somewhere about the power of enough, and then that spoke to like contentment, having an abundance mentality. Like I think for me, the gist of the book is that life is right here, right now. Live it. Right? And there's a part where he spoke to we should stop trying to predict the future. And we must be here. So I just really loved the power of enough. And I even introspected and thought, in what areas do I think I'm lacking and why is that? And I realized that I actually have enough, right? And then long-term thinking. Especially when it comes to investing, think long-term and not getting overnight results. And then that long-term thinking again develops a muscle of patience. It teaches you to be patient, that things are not put 2-minute noodles. That's not how life works. And the stories that and then he spoke to humility as well, tying in where he spoke about not being overconfident, not overestimating your abilities, and because that could make you make risks. And I was like, artisans must listen to this. People who work with their hands, like your tailor, your hairdresser, they will take 10 jobs and still feel like they will do the best thing. So that really stood out for me. And I loved the story that you touched on, Dr. Roche, the world's tallest man, when he spoke about fast growth and that leading to it's the word fragility. Yes. How fast growth is fragile. Fragility, yes. How it's fragile and slow growth is durable. And then I also liked how he touched on the Starbucks story, how it grew so fast, but they were able to pause and look back and realize that. And then there's a note that I made where he said, you will die if you grow too fast.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so learn to pace myself in life.
Yeah.
And then the Jeff Bezos part about adopting his mentality about every day always being day
the
one.
day one, the day one, yes, mindset.
Yeah, I like that because it brings in a new perspective, a fresh perspective to what things that you're doing, and it helps also with not becoming too familiar, that overconfidence, because every day is a new day. I care about Christy, his messes I knew every morning.
Oh Lord, amen.
Yeah. Yeah, so it reminded me of that. And then about I was it the stand-up comedian seeking a new opportunity before you exhaust your current opportunity. Yes, how you should, like, don't quit like cold turkey. I've quit my job before. Did I not suffer? Right? Plan while you're like, have a what's this word? Have like an exit plan. Plan for where you're going, also so that it keeps you excited, it keeps the fire going. And so that part about too much of a good thing is a catalyst for a bad one.
Yes.
Stay vigilant.
That was weird.
Every
that was
day.
like a weird theory, but yes.
Yeah, like, I love this book so much. And then going back to the world's tallest man, about how, like, an unrestrained growth, and then he says, grow at a rate where you can sustain for a long time. I really love that. I'm like, and then the part that comforted me even more, where he spoke about the value of wasting time, because I waste so much time. And then he's like, speaking to the importance of unstructured time, especially when you're sort of like in your creative space and you're in your creative mode. And I feel like if I'd read the actual book, I would have had more points. So I'll stop here.
Yeah, but you've done well. I mean,
thank you.
I think, I don't know about others, but my sense is if I listen to a book and it's quite amazing, I buy it. So I listened to this one the first time, and then I just knew that I needed to have this, right? And I bought it.
Yeah.
I read it, and then I listened to it again in preparation for this review.
Yeah.
But
you've done well. To buy it.
For someone who's doing it for the first time. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to buy it.
Yeah. Overnight tragedies and long-term miracles. That chapter really talked to me about compounding. Good things take time to compound. He says, you don't go to the gym today, tomorrow, you have a six-pack. It compounds over time. And there are times where you don't see the improvements. But yeah, I mean, he talks about how they've managed to deal with heart disease and how, even in a single year, the improvement is incredible. More than 500,000 fewer Americans now die of heart disease each year. But because it's not a reduction of 50%, right? People don't take it serious because it's like a reduction of 1% this year, reduction of 1% next year of people dying with heart disease. But when you compound those 1% over a period of time, the impact is quite huge. So yeah, the long-term thinking mindset is critical. Day one theory, I love day one theory. I've blogged about it several times. That attitude, I wish I adopted it every day as well. But it's amazing. Jeff Bezos is also quite good with that, with the type of analogies.
Yeah. The part that you just made speaks to that one about progress being hard to see.
Yes.
Yeah. And then he says, you're making progress. It's not going to be easy to see it, but in hindsight, you'd be like, oh, wow.
And it's quite interesting you say that, Cham, because I get to see a lot of people who are making progress in their lives, but they don't see it, right? Because it's not dramatic. It's gradual.
I'm one of
it's
them. I'm one of
those.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Because it's like, because it's like compared to negative events, when the world is crumbling, that's when you'll see. But when you're growing, you don't see it.
You don't see it.
Oh,
true.
Yeah.
I knew it's gonna hug you. This book was gonna hug you. I knew.
You know me and my books. Please keep picking my books for me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shama. Mr.
you.
Gunen, I know you said you didn't read the book. You just sent a message so that you put a disclaimer. The disclaimer is noted. Say something.
But it is interesting. I'll have to buy the book. It is quite interesting. The points that you're mentioning, that growth is not seen, and people tend to rush growth. We expect things to happen, quickly. And you are right. The author is right that those who grow quickly, they will die. But the ones who grow steadily, they will, last longer. So I'm taking those points, and I believe those are good points to take with. But quite interesting. Quite interesting.
Yeah, no, I think you must get the book. It's quite good.
I'll get the book. And read.
Awesome. Mr. Shai, you just joined now. Have you read the book? Did you manage to get the book? Robinson?
Sorry, dog. Work has been crazy for me this week.
No. I understand.
We rushed through the necessary bits that I had to do, and when I connected, I thought I was going to be the only one. At least people are still here, so not all is lost.
Yes. Did you manage to read the book? Yes, go for it.
Yeah, I did manage to read the book. It was quite an interesting one. Usually, I'm a person that dives deep into self-help and philosophical type of books. So this was a different one for me, right? And I did enjoy it. There are a few things that I like. A lot of the concepts that are distilled by the author are normal day-to-day concepts that that speaks to the timeless principles that govern human behavior, decision making, and the way that the concepts are portrayed. I feel that it's he has a unique talent for bringing complex ideas into relatable and engaging narratives. So I did enjoy the book. However, I have to say that it does have some repetitiveness, right? Repetitive throughout, so which can make these sections feel redundant, right? Some topics could benefit from deeper exploration, as the broad overview sometimes leaves you wanting more detail, right? But anyway, despite these minor drawbacks, I think same as ever is a very valuable for anyone looking to understand the contents in a representation world. Right?
Awesome. I agree. I also picked up some repetitiveness in there. But you're right. He's got this unique talent of taking complex things and bringing them down for us to understand. And 100%, I think 100%. Not everyone can do. We take it for granted, but not everyone can do that. Actually, come to think of it, not a lot of people.
I think it was Einstein that said, right, anyone can take something simple and make it complicated, right? But only a golden mind can take a complex theme and make it simpler, right?
And make it simple,
It shows you the depth of understanding into what he's talking about, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. Tumelo, let's read the book. You go first, because I could see you couldn't wait. Mr. Pule.
Yes, dog. No, for me, I would give the book a 7.
A 7, okay.
And out of 10, and I would say a 7 for now, because like you understand the book from where you are, so you might find that 2 years from now I'm at a different place, and because of that, I have a different perspective or context of something. So that's what I'm saying. For now, I'll give it a 7. The reason why there's a 3 missing, I would say, this book, it feels like they were like 5 concepts, and then 5 good concepts, and then they try to fill in a lot of concepts to make it a whole book, not just 4 or 5 principles.
Not a
so
booklet.
Because of that, that, like what Robinson is saying, it felt like it has some repetitiveness inside, because we make it a 200 page book. But other than that, it's a very good book. And for me, how I approach books is, you don't have to like everything. Read a book, get those 2-3 that are going to change your life. That's all that matters. That's how I approach books. So I'll give it a 7 for now.
Awesome. They say rereading a book has a way of showing how much you have changed, right? It's quite interesting. Because there are some books that I read once a year. The Godfather, I read that almost once a year. I used to read Maru by Bessie Head once a year. And it's quite interesting. Every year when I read those, I see how I've grown and how I understand certain things different. It's quite interesting. But thanks for that, Tumelo. Glenn, what's your rating?
I'll also give it a 7. And that would be as a result of what both Tumelo and Robinson also said. There's a bit of repetitiveness. I mean, you can read about risk almost throughout the book. There's like key concepts that repeat. And also, I think it's easier to maybe dive in a little bit. Well, it would have been easier if you kind of group them closer together, because, I mean, at the start of the book, you're reading this, and then in the middle, it's a different concept. Then towards the end, you're reading what you read at the start. So you kind of have to cross-reference and go back. So, it's kind of inefficient in that sense, though. I mean, he does say that you can read either chapter, you don't need to read in a sequence as per se. But yeah, that's basically the basis of me giving it a 7.
Awesome. Thanks, Gensito. Chairperson, Vena?
Thank you. I think I'll give it a 7 as well. I think I want to reread it again. I think it deserves a multiple read to grasp some of the concepts that he repeats. I think there's a reason he might be repeating. And I found comfort and hugs in Shama's famous words. There was something comforting about reading the book.
Yes, not true. Very true. Okay. Let me ask someone who will give it a high rating, I know for a fact. Shama.
Oh, yes, you know me. A very unashamedly and very fat 10 out of 10.
Yeah. How much?
That's me. 10 out of 10.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So
and I'm going to buy it. I'm going to buy it this weekend and just now take it all in. Oh, I absolutely loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah.
Okay.
When a book makes you happy, it made me happy.
Let me ask someone who will also give it a high rating. Malisela, let's hear you.
I'll give it a 8.5 to 9. 9 maybe.
Wow.
Actually.
Okay.
I really enjoyed it. I think again, it's something I've always thought about. It's a topic I will talk forever about. So I'd definitely give it a 9 at least, actually.
Yeah. So this book is a TED Talk.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Expected, Doc. Expected. 2025.
Okay. You know the story, right? It needs to be good storytelling.
Yes.
Yeah, it needs to be a good storytelling talk, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Robinson and then Tulani. Robinson, what's your rating?
Because it was something new to me and I enjoyed it. Usually books are sort of an acquired taste. I have to read it multiple times.
Yes.
but this one I enjoyed outright off the gate. So I'll give it an 8, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The two that I'm taking away are due to the repetitiveness of the book, and I also didn't like his over-exaggerated use of historical anecdotes. So I'll take away a 1 there as well. But it's a good book. It is a good book.
Yeah. Awesome. Mr. Kunene, you haven't read the book. Am I fair to ask you to read the book? Tulani?
Yes.
Yes. I was asking if am I fair to ask you to read the book if you haven't read it?
Trying to
Why not we are Mr. Kunene? What's happening?
I'm trying to unmute and it's not working on the phone.
Okay.
Yeah. I see they're giving it a high rating, making me more interested now to rate it because I haven't read it. But the points that I hear, they sound very, very interesting. So I will stick with them, give it a 7, even though I haven't read it. But what I'm hearing from the colleagues, it sounds like a very good book.
Yeah. Awesome, guys. Thank you so much. I'll give it an 8. I'll give it an 8 because I think of the stories. I love stories. I think he's done an amazing job of telling stories. He's got that talent, I think, as Robinson has said, to tell stories. He's not an original thinker. He doesn't have thoughts of his like anti-fragile, like how Nassim Taleb would talk about anti-fragile, or the late Daniel Kahneman talk about thinking fast and slow. He doesn't have sort of like his original thoughts, but I like and I appreciate the fact that he's able to take. Look, a lot of people who have read don't understand Nassim Taleb's books. He's such a brilliant thinker, philosopher, but he's not accessible to people, a lot of people. You either like him or you don't like him. And people don't like him is because they don't understand him. But he's a brilliant thinker. I think Nazim needs a Morgan Housel, the guy who's able to take his brilliant thinking and make it accessible to people. And I think I'll give Morgan Housel an 8 because he's able to, and I think what Robinson has said is able to take complex things and simplify them. Not water them down. And I think he doesn't water them down, but he makes them accessible. And I appreciate that. The 2 that I'm not giving him is because obviously repetitiveness, but also lack of originality. I think I'm going to be hard on him on that. That great book, concepts that have been out there, accessible, but I would have expected 1 or 2 new things. I'm rating this higher than The Diary of a CEO, but I'm rating it lower than The Psychology of Money because I think The Psychology of Money was quite good. But yeah, that's my rating. I mean, we are in between 7, 8, and 1 or 2, 9, 10. So I think we are there about 7.5 in between there.
Yeah.
What I don't know, man. Diary of a CEO.
What about Diary of a CEO? You loved it.
No, I'm saying I just feel like there's biases here.
I'll tell you why I didn't like the Diary of a CEO. I like the concept. I mean, it's a brilliant book. I just took offense that he didn't credit those concepts are not his. He didn't credit the people who, because he got those things from his interviews, right? From his podcast.
Okay, I get you.
Right. He didn't credit any of the people that he got those concepts from. And I think that's, for me, plagiarism. But anyway, I'm being academic.
Is this right now not plagiarism? Is this?
I mean, Gladwell does talk about how he got the 10,000 hour theory, right? He credits all the psychologists. This young chap didn't credit anyone in the book. I'm like, no, that's wrong. But but it's still a good book.
To his defense, Doc, I think if you guys read Wild Minds from this very same book, it'll give you a little bit of a perspective, because he speaks about characters that are actually related to the author Yayona, the CEO. And I was actually, what I wanted to ask, especially Robinson, was whether reading the chapter Wild Minds actually maybe changed his thinking a bit. Is it Robinson or no? Actually, it's not Robinson. It might be Malicel. I'm not sure, but somebody no with Diary of a CEO. I think somebody rated him 5, and it was more.
I think it's Malicela. That's Malicela, Glenn.
Oh,
me. It wasn't me. I think it's 7. I'm sure.
He thought he was a bit arrogant and all of that jazz, But
yes.
yeah, the point that that's made in this book, same as ever, is that sometimes we find the most brilliant people, and he talks about the pilot, that was really an expert in that. But personality wise, it was a complete not the type of person you even want to work with. So there's some adjustments there as well.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, maybe like Tumelo says, maybe if I reread the Diary of a CEO, I'll feel different. For now, I'm still upset, but that's okay. Robinson, I see your hand is up.
Oh yeah, I wanted to ask, or maybe it can be a question, but I mean it's going to be phrased as a comment. I see a common theme when you read books, especially with you, Doc. You like that originality in a book. But I feel that can make a book very, very hard to relate to. I mean, if you read anything by Ayn Rand, many people do not like anything. Well, most of the people do not like much of her literature, and that is because she's too original. I mean, she came up with her own philosophies and all of that. And if you sit and think, a lot of those concepts do not resonate with you now because it's something that you haven't had any exposure to. So it's almost impractical to translate it to real life, practicality.
No, I accept that. I think it's the case of reading quite a lot of books. I accept that. I accept what when you read a book, it's like, but I've read this somewhere. Like this I've read somewhere, And I think for me it's that case that's coming. I've read this before, you're wasting my time. I've seen this before, type of a thing. But with him, it was the story. Like the story was so amazing. The story was so amazing and it kept me going. And no one, in fact, because maybe I'm being too harsh, you're right. He's very good. His originality is storytelling. Not necessarily coming up with concepts, but just taking a story and putting it. I think that's where his originality comes in. Guys, we are 4 minutes over time. I think let's wrap it up here. Let's see if there's anyone with a burning desire to say something. Can we wrap it up here? Is it fine?
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Awesome.
Even though I came late.
No. Thanks for coming. Better late than never. Chairperson, we are interviewing a guy I had an opportunity to interview in one of the events. I'll share his book. It's a local author. It's a new book. Apparently, it's doing very well. I haven't had the chance to read the book, but I've had the chance to meet the author, and he's agreed to come through. So I'll share the details with you soon. It's a historical book. It's a local book. It's a historical book. And I'm going to leave this one to Chairperson Werner to facilitate in our next session. Right?
Oh wow! I'll be most honored.
Thank you so much. So I'll do the whole admin thing, and then we'll take it from the book is readily available also at Exclusive Books. Unfortunately, I don't think there's an audio book yet. So Shama will try and find a way if you want the book to get it to you. But it's apparently climbing the charts at Exclusive Books, even though I'm a bit skeptical of these charts. I'm a bit skeptical.
What's the name of it?
Do you remember it, Werner? It's somewhere, but yeah, I'll get it for you. I'll post it. Just give me 2 minutes. I'll post it on the WhatsApp group.
Dr. Roche, I was gonna say if Exclusive Books has it, the one here can order for me from South Africa.
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome.
And then I can pick it up from the shop.
Okay, awesome. All right, great stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, guys. It was amazing. Thank you. Same as ever. Amazing as ever. Thank you so much, and have a good evening, guys.
Thank you, Doc.
Good night.